Hello everyone and welcome to the first video on this channel. First little painting tutorial I've done. The goal of this painting tutorial is to show you guys a quick Dark Angels themed paint job that shouldn't take anything more than 1 to 3 hours in a quick session to get a tabletop ready mini for the following day. If you got to just paint up a quick character or just batch paint a bunch of individual guys, this is the perfect little tutorial. Everything I'm using is by Citadel aside from the primer. The primer I use I'll be going over just shortly, but the model is a bit of a kitbashed intercessor. I gave him a few cool knickknacks there, one of which being the plasma pistol taken from some random kit I had in my bits bin, the upgrade sprue providing the head and the shoulder, the Iron Warrior's power fist, take it up his close combat slot, and the Iron Halo coming from the Lionel Johnson kit as I use the helmeted option when I put him together. For the base, we keep things super easy. We do an Astrogranite with an Agrax Earthshade over top. The reason why is it just kind of gives it a kind of urban look. You got some concrete with some soot, or you got some, asphalt, It's just an easy base, gives it a little bit more definition than just having them stand on that plain gray. At that point, base is preference. The model is really what shines. But when you're looking at it from a 2-foot distance on the tabletop, all you really are looking for is that 40mm base to let them know that that squad has lethal hits, and they're going to be hitting hard. So, the primer I chose to use is the Army Painter Green Primer, and the reason I chose that is because I like the ease in which I can get the Caliban green base coats, and it's just a super, easy step. You don't kind of get any black spots in the way. So here we have the first layer of Caliban green on, and I usually do 2 thin coats just so I can get that nice rich green color. Do not be neat with this, just slab it on absolutely everything. Layering is really the secret here to getting everything, so just pick out all those nice, hard to reach spots and slather it with as much thin down paint as possible and get the job done. All right, the next step after doing the base coat is to give it a little bit of a highlight. Highlights you don't got to go crazy on. I'm not crazy on highlights. I just do a quick little dry brush of, the most dramatic color shift, and that is going to be Warpstone Glow, which is a green Citadel paint. Yep, Warpstone Glow. And you guys know the techniques for dry brushing. You just get it on the dry brush and slather as much off as possible, and just start hitting it from, top to bottom. Make sure to hit all those raised edges, the parts where the light is totally going to hit them, and a little bit of where light normally wouldn't hit, more of just reflective light. So you're just going to go ahead, slap that on, see where it falls. You can always touch it up with Caliban green if you don't like it. I save the wash phase to the absolute end, so if I do need to make any corrections or touch-ups on the more intricate parts, it's easy to do so with just a couple brush strokes. Remember to get into all those little nooks and crannies there. get those knees, get the arms, all those spots where you know the light's going to be hitting. Alrighty, the next step we're going to be moving on to is getting all those little joints where the black carapace that interfaces their armor with the Space Marine themselves. That is in between the joints, you know, the hips, behind the knees, and on the elbows there, inside of the elbows, and then the connections between their shoulders and their torso. You'll find these little, like, you know, weak points, essentially, of a Space Marine. So you just want to go over those with a couple of, you know, runs of black. You don't need to be particularly neat about this initially. You can go over with Caliban green after and clean up any of the overspill. But you just want to hit those spots with 1 or 2 coats, and yeah, just make it nice and, you know, void black. It gives a little bit of a, you know, definition change. Alrighty, once that's complete, we're going to be going into the Aquila, the little bit of, you know, parchment on his shoulder there, signifying that he is a lieutenant. I like to put a pauldron that has a little bit of charm to it. And there is a purity seal on his power pack. I'm going to hit with a Zandri Dust. Zandri Dust is a little bit darker than the average Wraithbone or even gold from War Regal Dark Angels. I just feel that it just kind of matches a little bit easier. It's a little bit more of a muted color, as you can see here. So I'm going to go ahead, you know, tag all those. Might take 1 or 2 coats. I made my Zandri Dust a little bit too watery, so I had to go over it again. I tried to not crush any of the details with overpainting. It did the job. Next, we're going to tackle that hood. Now, while traditionally Dark Angels usually use a Wraithbone, or in that case, a Screaming Skull hood, a nice beige color to offset that green, I'm going with a Val Gorbak Burgundy. I really like that color a lot. I think it looks awesome for drapes and capes and all of that stuff. I use it for my Inner Circle companions, and I figured, well, these guys are not necessarily part of the Inner Circle. They're well on their way, so they can get the color of the hood. So we're just going to thin down the paint a little bit, do 2 to 3 coats of Val Gorbak on his head there, and we'll take a look at the result. Alrighty, now that that's complete, it looks great. I love that little, you know, splash of color there. I went ahead and I dotted the eyes and the Purity Seal top with a little bit of regular red paint, just to get that out of the way. Again, Caliban green for any overspill there. You don't have to worry about mixing anything up. We're going to move on to the white of the shoulder sigil there of the Dark Angel's sword and wing. I'm just going to use a Corax White. I usually do a little bit of White Scar White overhead to get rid of that chalkiness. It's a little bit more of a smoother layer paint, as this does kind of get chalky when it dries. We will be using white later on the plasma, but it will separate in between now and then, so, you know, just a little bit to get you through this little step here. You might lose some of your detail in the white, you know, finish as the sword and wings kind of all blend together, as you see here as I try to get it in focus. But don't worry, once we hit it with a wash, all of those wings, feathers are going to pop out, the sword's going to pop from the shoulder, it's going to look a lot better. And I'm explaining that here now, but what I also wanted to point out is that a substitution for white would also be some type of really light gray, like a celestial gray, and you could do a little bit of white highlighting on top of that. Give it a little bit more of a grimmer, you know, aesthetic and feel. Next, we're going to be doing all the gold. There's not a lot of gold in this guy. There's only 2 pieces of gold. He has a little relic hanging from his belt there, and the halo from the Lionel Johnson kit. I want to start with a Retributor Armor because it is a heavy, thick, you know, gold base. And then we're going to do a little bit of that Gehennas gold, I believe it's pronounced. That's more of a regal, kind of rich gold. And at the end, we're going to hit it with a Reikland Fleshshade for the recesses. As you can see from left to right, that's the order in which I'm going to do things. Allow it to dry completely in between different layers. And I'd say 1 to 2 coats of each, aside from the shade. You should be able to hit the shade once, bring out that nice regal kind of like gold brown color, and have the edges really pop and shine. It'll look phenomenal. Next, we're going to be doing some of the Iron Warriors. Iron Warrior steel is what I choose out of a lead belcher or something like that, because when I hit it on my wash, it brings it more to like a really gritty, you know, coated steel. So we're going to be doing the Power Fist cabling there. He has a little bit of a mechanism in the base of his hand there. It's almost like it was an augmetic. So we're going to hit that with this silver as well as the casing of the gun. The action of the gun, I should say. And then this is going to be a really good starting point if you ever wanted to put some rust on there, or like Typhus Corrosion, or a little bit of Rise of Rust after. I think Iron Warriors is a way better gray than Lead Belcher ever could be. But that's preference. Lead Belcher is still one of the biggest ones. So, I skipped over the wash phase, but I went ahead and washed everything. Everybody and everything gets a Nuln Oil. The silver gets, the Iron Warriors, gets a Rattling Grime. The Parchments get a Agrax Earthshade, and the Reikland Fleshshade is overall the gold. Only got to do one coat, go a little bit heavy, scoop up where you don't want it pooling, just let it sit for about 20 minutes or so. The red gun case can be any red of your choice, whether it's going back to the Val Gorbak or maybe a Khorne Red or something a little bit more brighter like a Mephiston Red. But once you hit it with the Rattling Grime there, it really just kind of soaks it all into one coherent, you know, massive, grimy, steel-painted gun case there. So we're going to be working on those plasma coils, and to start, I usually do a neutral gray. Reason why is that getting the white over the green is kind of difficult, and given it is a kind of a glossy primer, the paint doesn't like to stick that well. So we're going to go ahead and just start with a little Celestial Gray. It sticks to the paint, it's a little bit heavier of a pigment. And it's not crazy dark, so when you do go over it with white, it kind of sticks a little bit easier. So here's me going over it with white. Do a little bit of Corax White, and like I did similarly to the shoulder pad, a little bit of white scar on top, just to give it those brighter, kind of like glowy glows that you're really looking for with a plasma. As plasma is supposed to be the brightest part of this entire unit here, or this model here, I should say. Everything I kind of paint has a darker hue, but when I paint my plasma, it really shines. Lastly, we're going to do the Pilar Glacier. We're going to do 2 coats of this. The first one really just kind of sets it into the recesses. The second one really pronounces it into the coil there. So we're going to do 2 coats. We're going to lap up as much as possible and use that little bleeding effect to have it fall into the recesses exactly where we want it. It'll pull up around the edges, kind of giving it like a glow effect, and I think that's a really cool way to kind of portray plasma without breaking into things like airbrushes or, you know, source lighting by hand brush, which sounds just like a nightmare to me right now, or any of that stuff. So it's just a good way to get that effect without having to put in, you know, crazy effort or alternative tools. And here's our finished product. A quick 2 or so hour Dark Angels Lieutenant. You can copy this recipe for any of the regular chaff models, whether it's an Intercessor, a Hellblaster, an Inceptor, you name it, this will work. Uses all Citadel paints. Thank you for watching. Take care.